Welcome to the School of Pharmacy and Biomolecular Sciences Open Day. My name is Claire May. I'm a lecturer here on the MPharm course. And the MPharm course is a course that's designed to integrate science with the skills and competencies that a pharmacist would need to go into a professional setting. We also do many other courses within the School of Pharmacy and Biomolecular Sciences. But the aim of my talk today is really just to give you a taster to behind the scenes of the Olympic Games and to kind of give you an idea of the opportunities that have come my way since graduating from the University of Brighton in 2001. So 11 years ago I graduated from here after having completed the 4 years of the MPharm course. Inspire a Generation was the tagline of the Olympic Games, and I hope that little montage kind of maybe brought back some of the feelings that most and hopefully all of you had whilst watching the Olympic Games during the summer. And also for me, the Inspire Generation was also about trying to get people to have aspirations around what they want to achieve and be able to go out there and get it. So the University of Brighton was involved in London 2012 in many different ways. It wasn't just that I was one games maker on my own going out there and representing the University of Brighton. We had many people who had a creative input also into the games, like Rachel, who designed the poster. I don't know if any of you were up in London and possibly seen that poster up in London, which I think is a fantastic representation of the Olympic rings. And also Lin Chung, who actually graduated from the University of Brighton, designed the Paralympic medals that were given out to the Paralympians at the medal ceremonies. So if you are interested, if you Google on our website, London 2012, you will see all of us game makers and volunteers and artists who got involved with the Olympic Games. So what was your lasting memory of the Olympic Games? Well, it might have been Michael Phelps becoming the most decorated Olympian of all time. And I don't know if you've seen when he won that race, he was pretty elated. In fact, it looked as if it wasn't really registering at some respects as well. Or it might have been Danny Boyle's great night. So that play on words, the newspapers were saying that possibly the open ceremony had been one of the greatest and that he may be knighted because of showing what Great Britain could give to the rest of the world and what we've done. Well, for me, because I was actually in the athletes' village, working in the heart of where the athletes were staying, where they were being looked after, where they were preparing for the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, for me, my kind of lasting memories, it could be meeting Bethany Firth the day after she received her gold medal. She was walking around, not with it round her neck, but within its little presentation box. And she kindly gave me the Olympic golds, or the Paralympic golds, so that I could hold it to feel the weight of it. And it's about, I think it's about the weight of a tin of baked beans, so it's quite heavy in its weight. And I felt so pleased for her, and also the fact that it had been designed by a Brighton graduate and one of the students over at Falmer was actually part of the Olympic team and they were assisting. So there had so many University of Brighton moments, and it seemed to connect me with lots of people as I walked through the village. Or it might have been when the Jamaican team used to come in and spend a lot of time with us, and we'd give them a lot of information around medicines and everything, and it just seemed to be a place that they wanted to hang out. So they kindly gave us all Jamaican training jackets, which was amazing, and signed pictures and stuff from Usain Bolt. So poor Usain, as he was preparing for his 200 metres, was signing all these different bits and pieces for us. So we were obviously extremely pleased, and a lot of the other teams gave us bits and bobs as well, which made the whole experience just so much more pleasing. Or was it the village people? Well, not these village people actually, but the people who were working within the athletes' village got nicknamed the village people, and we didn't all go around singing YMCA. But the gentleman in the middle here, this gentleman, Mark Stewart, he actually led the pharmacy team, and he was responsible for getting together the pharmacists and pharmacy technicians to provide pharmaceutical services across the 3 sites. And he pulled the team together in a way that he ensured that we all were coming from fairly different backgrounds. So I was one of the 100 lucky pharmacists to be selected out of an application of 1,400 to actually work at the Games. And at the time, I didn't quite appreciate how much competition there was. And it might be like some of you who are now applying to universities and you realise that there's quite a lot of competition out there, but putting yourself forward and presenting yourself in the best way can get you to where you want to be. And there were pharmacists from all different disciplines that I had never even thought pharmacy would actually be in. And it was amazing to get their experiences of how they were approaching the various different services. So we were dispensing prescriptions for the athletes and the non-athletes. We were providing information around where they could potentially purchase goods if we didn't have them in stock. And we really were in the pharmacy of the polyclinic at the heart of the athletes' village, providing the information that the athletes wanted. Or a lot of the time it was just an ear to listen to what they were going through and when they were nervous. So a typical day for me, well, the days were 8 hours long, but actually it was such good fun that most of the days for me started at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be walking out of the Olympic Park at maybe midnight, realising that I had to get up the next morning at 5 o'clock. So they weren't really truly 8-hour days, but that's what we were penciled in for. And we would go along and get into the village, have a debrief on what had maybe happened the night before. Because the polyclinic, which is actually this little building at the back here, looks a bit like, I don't know if anybody has been to Belfast recently, but the Titanic building looks very similar. So I felt very at home, I have to confess. But the debriefs would be around if anything had happened the day before. Something like there had been an incident where people were having a lot of diarrhea, so we were having to make sure that it wasn't from the catering or there wasn't something within the facilities that was causing this bug to be passed around. We were there to find out if there were any special cases, for example, if there were any drugs that they would need specific to any aches and pains that they may be suffering from. So the majority of the day was made up dispensing prescriptions for the athletes, talking to the GPs that were available for the primary care services as part of the polyclinic, and to be liaising with the physios, the podiatrists, the optometrists, the osteopaths around their various different needs as well. So we did very much become the heart of the polyclinic. In addition to that, we had a minor ailment scheme, which we used for non-athletes. So we called them the Paralympic or the Olympic family members. So that could have been anything from trainers to media staff to mums and dads of athletes who came to see their loved ones racing or whatever discipline they were in. And it meant that we could provide treatment without having to go to the doctor for minor conditions like toothaches, coughs and colds, those kind of things. But we had to be extremely cautious because, as you may or may not be aware, drugs in sport it's a really difficult area, although it's defined by WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency. So we had a lot of guidance, but you had to think of the things behind. So if we were giving out a cold remedy to a trainer of an athlete who had a cold, and then maybe their athlete got a cold, we had to ensure that that trainer wouldn't give their medicine to their athlete thinking that they were doing the best thing for the athlete. Because there is, in some cold preparations, pseudoephedrine, which is a banned substance by WADA. And that could have meant the end of their career. So I have to confess, at times dispensing some of the prescriptions, it was a bit stressful because we were always looking and double checking to make sure that we weren't going to ever end somebody's career at the point of us dispensing. Because one example, I don't know if anybody's got asthma or is familiar with the drugs used in asthma, but salbutamol. Salbutamol inhaled in normal doses is fine because some of our athletes might have respiratory conditions, but if you were to take it orally or inject it, it would be a banned substance. So we had to be extremely cautious. So this is where some of the biomedical sciences are more directed, because the anti-doping clinic was adjacent to the polyclinic. So I was extremely lucky to get an opportunity to go round the facility to see the way in which they would be collecting samples. And it's important that they did collect samples, urine and blood samples, because being able to ensure fair games for all is extremely important, because you don't want anybody to be advantaged over another person. And in fact, the athletes weren't even given any warning of when they would or wouldn't be sampled. So they could be pre-competition or after competition or even in competition. So you may have, when you were watching the TV, have seen people in that lovely iconic uniform, you know, that beautiful purple and tangerine that I became very attached to. But they would have had like a green band on their arm, and they were the anti-doping marshals, and they went up to all of the medal winners to say, once you finish with the media, guys, you're off with us back to the athletes' village and you're going to get your samples taken. And they might have to stay there for a couple of hours if, you know, the adrenaline was kicking in and they weren't able to provide a sample. And of course, you may have heard in the news that one of the Belarusian shot putters was actually stripped of her gold medal because she had actually taken a banned substance. She'd taken a steroid. And I have to confess, when I seen that in the news, I actually panicked. I was thinking, did we give her something that we shouldn't have given her? So I did look at the newspaper, then I seen what it was that she had taken, and I knew definitely that it wasn't down to the pharmacy in the athletes' village. And believe it or not, our top request in the pharmacy was condoms. And I think it became the butt of all jokes of the national media, because everybody was saying 150,000 condoms were given out to approximately 10,000 athletes in the Olympics. And the ratio, everybody was saying, wow, that's a bit high, isn't it? What are they all up to? But there's a really serious message behind giving out free condoms. It's a big public health issue. And actually having the condoms within the pharmacy meant that we had opportunities to have conversations with some of our athletes and non-athletes from countries where maybe free condoms aren't the norm. And it really did lead to a lot of really good public health messages, and it really was very beneficial, if not quite comical for the media. So it wasn't all work. I don't want you to feel sorry for me that I was chained to the pharmacy, you know, for more than 8 hours a day. We got an opportunity to go out and about around the athletes' village, which was a real privilege because, of course, it was a restricted zone, and we'd go out and they'd done a lot of planting of mature trees. So there was a lot around the ecology of the site. So any trees that were there that should have been kept had preservation orders on them. The waterways were cleaned up. There was Japanese knotwood, so the waterways were cleaned up. So there was a real drive on the ecology around the site to ensure that the site was up to standard, but not only that, that actually biodiversity was being considered throughout. And actually, the organisers put on a lot of entertainment, so we'd have people like beefeaters walking around and everybody getting their photographs taken. And the site itself was fantastic. It was so clean, it was really beautiful. And there were a lot of recycling points around as well, so that to ensure that everything was recycled, food waste was composted. And then if you were really, really lucky, like I was, you got to go into the Olympic Park and you got to go into the stadium and you got to watch these magnificent athletes perform at their best. And the venues themselves were magnificent. I mean, personally, I've never seen anything like it. The TV just didn't do it justice. It really was a fantastic environment. The spectators were brilliant, and the roars that used to go round the stadium were just out of this world. So, as I said, there was a serious sustainability side to the London 2012 Games. There was a lot of emphasis around ensuring low carbon footprint. So a lot of the ways in which they were building were environmentally friendly as much as they could be. Waste was a big issue, so we always had, after every lunch that we had in the canteen, which was feeding around about, I think, 20,000 volunteers, we had to ensure that all our waste was segregated so that the food was in one place, the recyclable materials were another, and everything else. And of course, the inspiring the people across the UK, that was the tagline, inspire a generation. And it really was to try and get people more active. And I have to confess, when I was up in London and walking along, because my friend kindly put me up for 2 weeks on the sofa, which was very nice of her, and I walked along the streets of East London, and there were children out reenacting various different Olympic events. So it was fantastic. The University of Brighton also holds the ethos around green credentials very close to its heart, and we've worked really, really hard to ensure that we're as environmentally friendly and low carbon footprint as we can be. And we've actually been ranked 3rd out of 145 pharmacies, universities, so we're really pleased with that, and that's something that we continue to try and promote. And there is a campaign that will be coming on shortly through the university to really ramp up the recycling and low carbon footprint. So back to where I started, to inspire a generation. Well, I have to confess that I feel that the Olympics inspired me to take every opportunity that I can and embrace it. And at the University of Brighton, we try to ensure that our students have every opportunity that they can so that they can do the best in whatever course they decide they want to do. And as I said, I was a graduate from the University of Brighton in 2001, and the opportunities that have come my way, I think, have been fantastic. I had the opportunity to work in a primary care environment where I worked very closely with doctors, nurses. I'm an independent prescriber. I was able to train here at the University of Brighton, become an independent prescriber. I've volunteered at drugs and alcohol programs across Brighton, worked in a prison, and my big thing is I got offered a job in Bermuda, but my husband wouldn't go. So I was a little bit disappointed by that, but there are other opportunities, not just within the UK. And I also got to go to Glastonbury, free of charge, didn't have to pay for a ticket, it was amazing. And I was part of the medical services there as well, which was just out of this world to see all of the fantastic acts and actually not have to pay. Oh, and have a porcelain toilet and showers that I could use as well. So that was definitely a big bonus. So I hope my talk has kind of given you an idea of the things that possibly might come your way after you graduate from whatever university you choose to, but that I hope you see that Brighton has certainly given me a lot of opportunities. And do you have what it takes? Brazil is looking for volunteers for 2016 Olympic Games. I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your tour around the university. Thank you.